Are you telling me you're related to Warren?
My late father's birth name was Robert Warren. He was Nigel's cousin, which makes Nigel a relative of mine.
I had no idea.
That's why Nigel was forcing me to work for him. He wanted to keep the family together. What a joke.
That's hardly surprising, given Nigel's twisted mentality.
As my dad used to say, you can't choose your family.
Was Robert involved in any of Warren's dirty businesses?
A long time ago, but thankfully, Dad walked away from it. Otherwise, my mother never would have married him. Having a crook for a husband was too shameful for her. Mum could be awfully strict, to say the least.
And did your parents succeed in cutting ties with your father's family?
I wish they had. Dad even changed his surname to avoid being associated with his relatives. But they kept trying to pull him back into their nest of vipers. Throughout my childhood, Nigel and the others repeatedly showed up at our doorstep. They used to offer my dad money and expensive gifts, expecting to win him over. Their visits used to trigger old memories. Memories of the man he used to be. A man he hated. Whatever my father had done in the past haunted him. It resurfaced each time his relatives showed up. He never talked about it. Instead, he chose the comfort of a pub and downed pints to drown his sorrows. It sent shivers down my spine when he stumbled in through the door each night, shouting out loud.
I hope he wasn't abusive.
My father was a mess, but he never laid a finger on his family. He was punishing himself for his past actions, not us. Although that caused his drinking to spiral out of control.
Did Robert ever overcome his issues?
Only years later, after being sent to prison. Unfortunately, he had to get locked away to sober up. Quite sad, if you ask me.
How old were you when your father wound up in jail?
I was only 9, but my sisters, Clemency and Mildred, were even younger. None of us were ready to face the world without a father, but somehow we managed. By the time he was released, I was already 13. By that point, we didn't need him anymore.
Robert never reached out to you after getting out of prison?
Oh, he tried, but none of us wanted to see him. We resented him. A father is supposed to protect his family, not leave them with nothing. It took us a long time to forgive Dad, unlike our mother, who never did. He stopped existing to her the moment he got locked up.
Well, as harsh as it sounds, she must have had her reasons to give up on your father.
However, she had neither the right nor any justification to project her hatred for him onto us, his daughters. At first, it was merely a slap for every harmless error we committed. But it eventually escalated. Her beatings grew in frequency and intensity. I don't know if she saw it as discipline or merely as a release for her pent-up emotions. But it was clear that Mum had gone off the rails. She'd become unrecognizable.
That all sounds horrible, Georgiana. Do you think any of it has affected how your life has turned out?
To a certain degree, yes. But the wrong decisions I made were mine alone. As a teenager, I was invited to join a gang and was stupid enough to accept.
The world of crime has its allure. I saw many of my childhood friends give in to its temptation. They were only seeking better lives, but all they did was waste their futures.
Sounds familiar. Back then, I dreamed of joining a local gang. They seemed to have it all. Fancy clothes, posh food, and luxurious flats. I wanted what they had. But everything comes at a cost. By joining the gang, I lost my family. My mum, she disowned me. I stopped existing to her just like my father did.
Did you ever try to reconnect with her?
I didn't bother. To that heartless woman, I was nothing but a failure. Or, in her own words, a rotten apple she wanted nowhere near her good daughters. That was pretty high and mighty for someone who used to send her children to beg for money.
Despite your mother's shortcomings, she was still family. It must have been hard being kicked out of your own home.
I wasn't ready to leave the nest, that's for sure. The hardest part was saying farewell to my sisters. It felt like I was losing a part of myself. But at the time, being away from Clemency and Mildred was for the best. I never wanted to be a bad influence on them. I hoped life would get better once I'd grown up. Oh, how naive I used to be. Things only got worse. I had no joy in my adult life, except for my short-lived marriage.
Your husband's name was Benjamin, right? He came up a couple of times in your police report.
My Benny. He and I had joined a street gang around the same time. We were both teenagers when we met. Two foolish kids who grew up together around the wrong people. But by the time we reached 25, Ben and I were tired of that life. We decided to get married and have a small ceremony, just the two of us. I wouldn't have had it any other way, though. It was perfect.
So, you and Benjamin walked away from your gang?
We did. And after our wedding, we hoped to lead a peaceful life in the countryside. But we needed money for a fresh start. It was our attempt to acquire some that got us arrested.
Your police report mentioned you were incarcerated for drug possession.
Well, things went sideways. We'd hoped that my father's family could spare us some cash. They were pretty well off. Instead, we got a batch of drugs. Nigel insisted that if you want something, you have to earn it. Ben and I could sell his product and keep the profits, as long as we gave him his commission. But dealing drugs is a risky business. There was this goon who went after us and caused a ruckus. It caught the attention of the police, and we were arrested.
What happened afterward?
Ben and I were sent to different prisons, but even while separated, we had each other's backs. We kept in touch by writing to each other. His words alone were enough to get me through the first months in prison. But one day, the letters just stopped coming. Deep in my heart, I knew something had happened. And my fears were confirmed when I got a visit from a prosecutor. Ben had been killed in prison.
My condolences, Georgiana.
Thank you for your kind words. I could have done with more of those back then. Back then, I was even robbed of any peace to grieve for my late husband. The other inmates made sure of that. It was truly my darkest hour.
Did you have anyone to support you during that time?
I wrote to Clemency and Mildred. I needed support. Someone, anyone to talk to. But I never received a reply from them. At the time, I didn't understand why they'd abandoned me. I only found out much later that the letters had never reached them. My mother had been hiding them from my sisters. For most of her miserable life, that woman clung to the fear that I might... She hadn't changed one bit. Still the same heartless witch who disowned me for joining a gang.
I don't understand why she'd be so unwilling to leave the past behind.
My mother hated me in the same way she hated my father. It was easier for her to blame us for everything that had gone wrong in her miserable life.
What a lamentable attitude. Even if that was true, it doesn't justify her forsaking her own child.
Well, it doesn't matter anymore. She's no longer with us. My mother passed away a couple of months after I was released. It was at her memorial that I saw my sisters again.
Were they happy to see you?
I can't say they both were. Things had changed between us. Clemency was condescending toward me. She'd become heartless, just like our mother. But Mildred and I reconnected. It was thanks to her that I got my first job after prison. Unfortunately, I didn't stay in that job for long, all because of Nigel.
You've been deprived of happiness for too long, Georgiana. I hope you can find some here on Isla Esperanza.
People like me don't deserve to be happy, Mr. Navarro. There's a heavy burden I carry on my shoulders. A dark secret from my past. And after everything you've done for me, I owe you the truth. I've killed a person.
You've committed murder, but that wasn't mentioned in your police records.
That's because it was in Benjamin's file. My dear Benny took the blame and was arrested for a crime he didn't commit.
Georgiana, tell me what happened.
Remember the goon who caused a ruckus? I didn't tell you the whole story about him. We thought he wanted to buy some drugs from us. You know, business as usual. But the bloke came to rob us, not to buy from us. Of course, Ben wasn't about to let us get mugged. That man didn't hesitate for a moment. He started beating the hell out of Ben. I tried to interfere. But I just got knocked away. I knew that if this continued, my Benny would have been killed. So... and stabbed the man. Mr. Navarro, I never wanted to take his life.
Georgiana, you were only defending the man you loved.
Yet killing someone ate away at my conscience. I froze in panic when I realized what I'd done. It was up to Ben to keep his cool for the both of us. He threw the corpse into the river, and intended to drive us out of London that same night. But someone saw him disposing of the body and reported our number plate to the police. It didn't take them long to find us.
Tell me, Georgiana, was Warren responsible for any of this?
Years later, I found out that Nigel had sent that bloke after us. After I left prison, he approached me with pictures of me murdering his men. That bloody bastard threatened to send it to the police if I refused to work for him.
I can't believe he would go that far just to blackmail you. That seems too much, even for Warren.
The bloke was only supposed to steal the drugs, so I'd end up being in Nigel's debt. I imagined the pictures were going to be used as proof that I was selling his dirty product on the streets. With such evidence, that monster would likely have coerced me into the family trade much sooner. But that brilliant plan backfired, of course, when his man snapped and tried to kill Ben.
So, he waited until you were out of jail to finally make his move. Only a filthy individual like him would use a situation like that to his advantage.
I should have let Nigel go to the police and dealt with the consequences of my actions. But I couldn't face prison again.
Instead, you had to suffer through all those years working for him. Isn't that enough punishment for a lifetime?
I don't think that atones for my sins. I'm a murderer, Mr. Navarro. Are you willing to have one in your employment?
Georgiana, you shouldn't keep blaming yourself for what happened back then. It's not the past that defines us, but the future we strive for. You're a good person. The remorse you've shown is proof of that.
I hope I can live up to your expectations, Mr. Navarro.